Welcome back to another Warhammer 40K video. Today we are reaching back into the history of One Mind Syndicate and bringing back the old school basing tutorials that we created when the channel first flipped over to exclusive 40K content. Recently we had a friend who asked us for some basing tips for his Nurgle army that he was starting, and I remembered that we had an entire playlist of basing tutorials, so I wanted to bring that back just because it got buried underneath all of the lore videos, and there are still a lot of skills and techniques found within these basing tutorials that you can use for your basing needs nowadays, especially if you're just getting into the hobby. Now, these were done many years ago when our sound quality wasn't all that great, so you will hear a lot of loud pops and things like that. I'm sorry about that, but the skills and the techniques that you learn from these videos are very valuable. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoy. Welcome back to another basing tutorial brought to you by One Mind Syndicate. Today we're making a chaotic world or chaotic planet theme base. So the first thing you need to do is you need to get some Elmer's glue. You could use any other type of PVA glue, but I found that Elmer's does the best job for what we're going to do. Anyways, just spread it around all around the base. Like you see there, I have one of the new Age of Sigmar Khorne warrior guys on there. And now what you do is you put some sand and super glue onto the PVA glue while it's still wet. You don't wait for it to dry. What this does is it crunches the PVA glue together, mixes in with the sand, and it gives you this really cool, nasty, organic look to it. Now you see that it dried and you have those little bubbles that look disgusting and chaotic. Now what you do is you base the entire model black. I'm using just regular acrylic paint because this is just the base. It's not really that important. Once that's done, I go over it with a brown. This is going to be the base, or well, not the base color, but right underneath it to give it a little more 3D look. This is going to be the very bottom color. Just make sure to spread it all around, wait for it to dry, and then go over it with a maroon or some type of dark red. As you see there, of course this can be changed up. You can also use green if you're doing some Nurgle stuff, or blue, whatever works best. And now I'm going over with lighter red, just to bring out some of the higher bits of the bubbled area that the two glues created. And of course I'm going to highlight it with a tannish color right now, just to bring out all those details. I use this technique a lot, not the dry brushing, but the two glues together. It really brings a cool, nasty look to it, perfect for Chaos or Dark Eldar or even Tyranids. I'm probably going to make some Tyranid basing tutorials pretty soon where I use this technique along with other techniques, so be sure to subscribe. There you go, that's the look of it. I just need to clean up the edges, but other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Today we're going to be doing a Warhammer 40K basing simple tutorial. You could use this for fantasy or 40K. Take a piece of corkscrew sheet. You can buy this at any hobby store and thin it out. It's too thick for you to put it on a base. I feel like that it elevates the model too far up, and I don't like that. So I'm going to thin it out. I do this by just cutting pieces from one side. Make sure to only do it from one side because you want the other side to stay flat so it can be glued onto the base. And once you have it like that, just take off the excess with your hands so it creates little crevices within the sides. Add some PVA glue to the areas that you just freed up and put sand just to give it more character. And now you just take the pieces that you broke off with your hand before and stick them onto different areas of the base to give it a 3D look. These are like little rocks that ended up there. Of course, I based the entire thing black. Make sure to base it properly. Corkscrew has a lot of holes, so make sure to get all the crevices. Dry brush it with gray. Dry brushing is a really good technique that I use. Simply get as little bit of paint as you can on the brush, a nasty brush, and then just paint away. And I did a top layer of white, and there you go. That is the base. Very simple, very quick. So if you have a lot of models, this is excellent. This is an excellent technique to use to base all of them. You can get a lot of these bases done in a matter of maybe an hour. So be sure to subscribe to the channel to get more basing tutorials. Check out Patreon for battle reports, and thank you so much for watching. Welcome back to another basing tutorial. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a simple and easy lava base. So the first thing I did is I took the base and I added some PVA glue. Now the important thing to note here is you want to leave spaces, almost like rivers through your base, because this is going to be where the lava is going to flow. And then I added some sand, of course, and this is going to act as the little islands in between. Now I didn't like how some of the rivers didn't connect, so I went back with a pen and I pushed the glue out of the areas where I want the lava to flow. I primed the entire thing black, and now I'm dry brushing a gray. Don't worry about getting it inside the actual lava area, because like you see right there, you're gonna go over it with red. And once you have the red completely on, you want to add some yellow. Now as you can see there, I am still allowing some of the red to show through on the bottom. In my opinion, you're gonna see towards the end, the less yellow I think looks a little better, so it's really up to you. But then I added some very thin white, and there you go. That is a very simple, easy, quick lava base. It's not hard at all. You just gotta play around with the colors and play around with the thicknesses of each of the colors. If you guys like this basing tutorial, be sure to check the channel because I have a lot more. Thank you for supporting One Mind Syndicate by sharing this video and liking it. And if you guys want to support us on Patreon, go ahead, go over to Patreon and pledge your awesome donation. I'm trying to save up for a Ferrari. I have a long way to go. But thank you guys so much for watching. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate. Alright guys, welcome to the basing tutorial that I'm going to do here for my Gretchen. First you add in a bunch of Elmer's glue, white glue, PVA glue, whatever you want to call it. And you just want to make sure to get it all the way around the base, all sexy like. And then you add in some rocks. Make sure to place the rocks closer to the edge so your models have space to actually sit or stand. I did the rocks a little too close in my opinion, but oh well. And then you just dip it with some sand. I bought this sand at Michael's for like $1 or $2, and it's lasted me a very long time. So shake off the sand and that's it. And now let's go into the painting. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the big rocks gray. Gray that I'm using is again the cheap type of gray that you can get like at Walmart or at any craft store, and I do that because it's a base. You don't need to use expensive paints. I forgot to tell you guys, I primed it black before I painted the gray. So now let's hit it with some brown. Pretty self-explanatory. I did brown because that was the closest thing that I had. Now for the brown, what I'm gonna do is apply a dry brush of a lighter brown, just to bring up some of the details on the ground. I really love dry brushing just because it brings out so much of the detail, and it gives this sense of dryness to the model that you're painting, or in this case the base that I'm painting. Alright, now that we have that, I'm going to dry brush it one more time, but this time with a white. Be sure not to do it too much, otherwise it's gonna look kind of like snow. I mean, unless that's the thing that you're going for, but I know I'm not, so this should be good. Alright guys, and there is the awesome base that I made. Hope you guys enjoyed watching this tutorial on this basing. If you guys want to check out more basing tutorials, be sure to subscribe because I'm going to upload a couple more for this Gretchen modeling log. Alright guys, let's get started on the second base in this basing tutorial with the Gretchen Modeling logs that I'm doing. So first thing, I took a piece of foam board and I measured out 3 centimeters, and why I'm doing this is because this is going to be the walls to the ruin part of the base. So right now I'm measuring how tall the or how much space the Gretchen has from the gun to its foot, so I know how much space it needs. It's about half a centimeter, but I'm gonna do 1 whole centimeter because I am going to cut it later on to fit the Gretchen, so he can so it seems like he's shooting from the wall ruins. So like you see right there, I made a square. And now I'm going to mark the middle part of the 3 centimeters and then cut that out, because those 2 pieces are going to form the corner of the ruined wall. Make sure you're using a sharp knife. The knife that I was using has gotten kind of dull, and it just, makes things harder to cut, and it just it's frustrating basically. See, like, as you can see right there, I didn't cut the first time. But once you have that cut, that's what it's going to look like. Make sure that the Gretchen can fit in there. And like I said, I cut the walls too tall on purpose. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make little indents inside the wall as if something blew up there or if it fell apart, just so that the Gretchen can fit its little blaster in there so he can shoot. Another technique I'm doing right now is I'm cutting the edges of the walls, because if this is a ruin, the wall has been worn and torn, therefore there won't be perfect straight lines like I cut. And I'm also cutting holes inside the wall just because they are in a battlefield. It's the 40K universe, therefore there has to be some type of bullet holes and things like that. So I'm doing the cutting on both sides just to make the wall look worn out. And what I'm doing now is taking a toothpick and making smaller holes inside the wall. This is a little quicker than using the hobby knife to make holes that, are going to be hard. Now use Elmer glue. Now I use Elmer's glue to glue together the 2 pieces, the corner pieces, and I'm just going to let it sit there so it can form a bond so it's easier to move. Now let's bring in the base. And with the base, I just want to double check to make sure that or first I want to make sure that the base fits there perfectly without having the walls go outside the base. And yep, it fits good. Make sure that when you're doing this to try to get the edges to be as far out as possible, so you have more room for your model to sit in the center. And then I put some PVA glue all over the base, and now I'm adding some little rocks into the base just so it looks like it's out in the open. And now I am going to add a bunch of sand. Like I said before, this sand I bought at Michael's for like $1 or $2, and it comes in handy all the time. And there you go, unpainted base. Now I primed the model black, and now I'm painting the wall gray. Now I have other, like in the other video log that I showed you, I'm painting the rocks gray. So later on in the video I'm going to change the color of the walls because I don't want to match it to the rocks. And then I painted the floor brown because again I want to keep the theme of the brown and the gray with the Gretchen squad. Now I'm adding a blue kind of tint to it, which I'm going to change later. I'm dry brushing lighter brown onto the floor just to give the details more detail. And now what I'm going to do, or now what I did is I realized that the gray was not good for the wall, so instead I painted it black once again, and I am dry brushing white all over the wall just to give it detail, and that's how it's gonna look like after it's all done. Now the Gretchen of course isn't painted, but my ruined wall looks pretty badass. Thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial on this ruined base modeling log for the Gretchen modeling log. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate. Don't forget to subscribe to keep watching more basing tutorials, and of course the main goal is to film awesome battle reports for you guys, so be sure to subscribe for those in the future. This was Gershwin signing out. Welcome back to another basing tutorial. For this tutorial I'm going to show you how I'm going to make a cool Majestic Rock, I guess you could say, to put one of your main characters in. So what I did was I got a piece of pink foam, cut it to the right appropriate size to fit on my base. Once I had that, I just kind of sculpted it to make sure that it had no rough straight edges, and so it looked like a rock. And now what I'm doing is I'm laying down some Elmer's glue down onto the base, and I'm going to glue my Majestic Rock onto the center of the piece. And as you can see, I'm testing out to see if the Gretchen will stand on it, and it does. Therefore now I add some sand, and that's pretty much it for this base. It's going to be very, very simple, but it's going to be very awesome on the battlefield. I painted the whole thing black, primed it black, and now I'm painting it gray, or the main rock gray, to fit the theme of the other bases that I've done. I am adding the brown dirt coat, and now I'm following it up with a light brown dry brush to bring out the details. It's okay if you get some on the main rock since it's so big. Just make sure to go over it later on with some gray. And now I'm dry brushing just the rock white, so to add a huge, contrast between the dirt and the rock itself. And that's pretty much it for this base. As you can see, it looks awesome. If you guys enjoyed this basing tutorial, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more basing tutorials. I have a couple more in this Gretchen modeling log. Welcome back to another basing tutorial. So first thing I do for this base is take a piece of foam board and cut a little square that's going to fit inside my base. That's going to act as one of the walls to the mech shop or scrap metal yard, whatever you want to call it. I dug some holes in there to look like bullet holes, and now I'm cutting some pieces of cardboard in little squares to act as the scrap metal that's going to be laying on the floor of the base. Now I'm taking a toothpick and cutting small little cylinders in it. This is basically going to act as either, if I can make them small enough, they're going to act as bullets. If they're too big, then they're just going to be random pieces of metal that are laying around that the mech used, or that the Gretchen were carrying around. Now I add the PVA glue, or Elmer's glue, whatever you want to call it, onto the base, and I start laying out my pieces. So the wall I want to put as close to the edge as possible, and then the scrap metal I want to layer it together. One of the scrap metals though, or one of the pieces of cardboard, I want to put onto the wall like as if it's standing up, just to give the base a little bit more character. And then I position everything with my hobby knife. And now I'm gonna throw in some rocks. These rocks are, showing that the mech tool is dirty, or the mech base is dirty. It might be outside, and there's a bunch of things all over it. Now I'm gonna flock it with some sand. Now I prime the model black, and now I'm adding the dirt brown color to the bottom of the base. Now, like I said before, this tool, or this scrap metal yard, is actually outside, so there's going to be mud dirt on the floor. Now I'm dry brushing it with a lighter brown, just bringing up some of the highlights of the sand that I glued down there. And now we're going to move on to painting the bigger pieces. I painted the rocks gray, and now I'm painting the scrap metal a metallic color. And you guys aren't gonna see this, or you guys didn't see this, but I painted, or I dry brushed the wall with a white, because I wanted to leave that contrast between the rocks and the wall, because I didn't want the wall to look like a rock. And now I'm painting the bullets or the cylinder scrap metal, and as you can see, I made a checkered pattern on one of the scrap metals, and this is the finished piece. There are multiple ways you can go about adding different things to the base. You could even add some extra scraps that you got laying around from other kits onto this base, just to make it more scrap yard looking, I guess. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Comment down below if you guys have any questions. I know I skipped over some of the painting steps, but I'll be happy to answer them in the comment section below. We're going to continue doing more basing tutorials on this Gretchen modeling log. Welcome back, guys, to another basing tutorial. First thing you do is you take a piece of pink foam and you cut it to make it, I guess, smaller in length. And then now what I'm doing is I'm cutting the template that I drew on of the base. This is gonna act as the ground part of the base. I am cutting the edges just to clean it up a bit, and now I'm cutting the little valley ravine thing in the middle, and now I'm making sure that it fits well on the base, and again doing the whole cleanup thing by cutting the edges. And like I said before, this is acting as the ground part to the base where the model is actually going to stand, and then the space in between is going to represent where the leaking waste is going to be. I added some sand on there and I squished it together just to puff it up. I primed it black, and now I'm painting the land parts brown to match with all my other figures, but you can add on whatever color you want. If you have gray bases, go with gray. Now I'm dry brushing the brown with a lighter brown just to bring out the details of the rock. And now it's time for the good part. I am going to start painting the green goo or the green waste that is going through the rocks. To do this, I started with a pretty dark green, and after that you lighten it up by either adding white to your initial green color, or if you have multiple colors, just go with the lighter green that you might have. And I do this 3 times, making sure to make the lines thinner and thinner as the lighter the green gets. And there you have it. You have yourself your own little leaking waste base. You can do this for pretty much anything, and as a matter of fact, you could also not do the rocky look to the top of the base. What you could do is you could just try your best to cut it evenly so there is no rockiness to it, and it's just a straight base. I'll create another tutorial explaining what I mean later on, but yeah, this is the leaking waste base through the Gretchen camp that I created. I hope you guys enjoyed this basing tutorial. Welcome back to another basing tutorial. For this tutorial, I took a piece of cardboard, I took the back of a HeroClix box, and now I am drawing the outline of the base onto the cardboard piece and drawing checkered patterns, which are going to be the checkered patterns for my Orchid checkered scrap base. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the cardboard with the pattern that I just did. What I like to do is use scissors, because if I use my hobby knife, the hobby knife does not cut as well. And the reason I'm doing this as opposed to just drawing the pattern onto the base is because it adds a 3-dimensional look that just makes it a whole lot better. So what I am doing now is just adding a bunch of PBA glue onto the base to stick the checkered pieces onto the base with my hobby knife. The reason I'm using my hobby knife is because if I try to use my fingers, it's just going to be way too messy. Glue gets all over my fingers and the pieces stick to my fingers, and it's just horrible. Now, as you can see, the pattern is not perfect, and that's because this is an Orchid base. Orcs don't really care about patterns or anything of that nature, or organized patterns of that nature. I sprinkled some sand on there, and now I based it black. I'm priming the sand parts brown, because that's what the rest of my bases within this squad looks like. So I'm trying to keep the colors I guess uniform. Now I'm adding a dry brush of a lighter brown, and making sure to hit all those cool details. Now this is the fun part. This is the part where I get a good brush and I start painting on some white paint onto the scrap pieces. Of course, I want to go in alternating pattern so it looks like a checkered pattern at the end. The reason I chose white is just because it's gonna pop when people look at it, but you can use any colors that you want. I would recommend though lighter colors with dark colors, just to add more contrast between the two, so it looks really nice. Now fluff wise, you can consider this anything that has to do with orcs that fell on the ground. For instance, it might have been a gargantuan orc stampa that fell apart, and now it's design or scraps are all over the ground, and the Gretchen or orcs are running around on top of these things. I like to add fluff to my bases, or I like to think about the fluff to my bases, which is why I'm telling you guys this. But as you can see, I added the I added the red color onto the base, giving it that checkered pattern. And now I'm going to go over the edges and parts of the center with metallic, because these are metallic scrap pieces of metal, and when it fell from the stampa, it probably got all scratched up, and it probably got all scratched up while it was on the stampa. This adds a really nice third color to the base, and it just, you know, like I said before, drives home the idea that these are scrap pieces of metal that were painted by the orcs. And there you go, that is my orky checkered scrap base. It's a lot better than just putting a bunch of scrap pieces of cardboard on top of each other and dry brushing them. This pattern gives more of a cool aesthetic. To create a Necron stone base, first I took a piece of pink foam and I began to cut it to a manageable length. Once I have that, I created a rectangle that's 2 centimeters long by 1 centimeter, and that is going to act as my very first stone. And now what I'm doing is I'm cutting from the center of the top to the bottom corners to create a pyramid shape. The more cuts I have, the more edges that the stone is going to have, which once I dry brush it, it's going to look a whole lot better, so make sure to keep that in mind. And then I started working on the second stone, and this one is a bit smaller. Play around with the length, see which one you like, and I would recommend to keep it to 1 to 2 stones per base. You don't want to go overboard and put a bunch of stones and then not have your figure be able to fit on it. And then I added some PVA glue to the bottom of the stones, and I glued those things to the base. Make sure to get them to as close to the corner as possible to make room for your model, of course. And then I added some PVA glue to the whole base, and I'm gonna add some sand. This sand I bought at Michael's, and it's an essential thing that you are gonna need when creating bases. I primed the entire thing black, and now I'm gonna add a dry brush of gray. And after the gray dry brush, I'm going to add some green to the Necron stones, because the Necron stones are of course green. Play around with the greens that you have. The lighter the green, the more it's going to pop against the black background. So just play around with it. And there you have it, guys. That is my Necron stone base. Another thing that I would recommend you guys to try out is try to cut them at different angles to make them seem like they're jutting out instead of all of them sticking up. I tried that a couple times, and it looked pretty good. And of course, play around with the colors. Add maybe some highlights on the very tips, just for more added awesomeness. Welcome back to another basing tutorial with One Mind Syndicate. Today we're going to make a square cobblestone brick path. So first thing I did was I took a piece of pink foam and I thinned it out. Pink foam is very thick, so in order for it not to look like your model is super high on the base, you have to thin it out. And then I marked the base around the pink foam. And then I started marking where the square bricks are going to be. I did 1/8 of an inch, but my recommendation is for you to go a little bit bigger, because I felt that the stones that I'm cutting here, or the lines that I'm making here, are way too close to each other. It still came out pretty good, but just for future reference, make the lines a little bit farther apart. But anyways, I made sure to cut parallel lines across the pink foam, and now I am making the brick pattern. It's a very simple alternating pattern. You just start off with one line and you go straight down, and then you just do that every other line, and then you kind of just alternate. And then I made sure to shave off all the extra stuff that I did not need from the base, and that's what the base is gonna look like, the outline of the base. I made sure that it fits on the actual base, and it does, so it's all good. I primed the model, or I primed the base black. I added some PBA glue to stick that onto the base, dry brushed it with a gray because it's stone brick path, so gray is a good color to choose. And what's cool about this is you still get the black outlines of the brick, and then I highlighted each individual, or a pattern of bricks, with white, but you could choose a different lighter color gray. It makes a really cool effect. And there you go, guys, that is the square cobblestone brick path base that I created for any model that you might have in the city or in like some type of village or something. Welcome back to another basing tutorial brought to you by One Mind Syndicates. Today I'm going to teach you how to create a cobblestone base, perfect for fantasy, or I guess you could use this for Warhammer 40K if that floats your boat. Maybe the background of your Space Marine chapter is that they are on a long lost planet that the Emperor forgot or something. I don't know. Maybe they're in the medieval times. But anyways, so you cut a piece of pink foam and you cut it to a manageable length, and then you thin it out. It's very important to thin this out, and then once you have that, as you see in what I'm doing right now, is I'm tracing the base onto the pink foam and cutting the excess pink foam. Don't worry if the base is not even. Most of the time cobblestone paths aren't even. So now what I'm doing is I am drawing in the design of the cobblestones. It's very simple. All you do is make circles of varied lengths and sizes, and once I have that, I go along the edges and make sure to continue pushing the design downward to give that effect that these are stones that are glued together or put together. Once I have that done, I put some PVA glue on the design that I created, and I attach that to the base. Then I prime the model black because I want to prep it for paint. I decided to go with a dark brown paint for the crevices, because once I dry brush it, like you see there with a lighter brown, I'm gonna still have those really nice dark brown tones between the crevices. And now what I did is I added a little bit of white to the brown that I just used, and now I am painting some of the cobblestones. What you want to do is, to make this pop out, you want to alternate colors, and it really depends on you and how many colors you want to add. As you could see in the following images, it's really up to you when you want to stop adding color. And it doesn't necessarily have to be brown. Of course, really good color choices would be like the purple red that you see there, or even like a light blue mixed with some dark blue. And there you have it. That is the cobblestone base, perfect for fantasy Warhammer 40K. And I hope you guys enjoyed these basing tutorials and listening to the heavy breathing of old school Gershwin. Sorry about that. But yeah, I hope that you guys can use these techniques on your bases. Stay tuned for more hobby videos, of course more lore videos to come, and thanks for watching, guys. We've come a long way. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Oh, what if you could put my freedom back in